Welcome to the presentation on the Central Goldfields Shire budget for the year 23-24. This summary will provide an overview of the key elements and the highlights of the budget. My name is Lucy Roffey and I'm the CEO of Central Goldfields Shire Council. Joining me today is Philippa Sperling, Manager of Finance. Philippa and the finance team do a terrific job putting the budget together each year. So thanks for joining me, Philippa. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and extend my appreciation for the Dja Dja Wurrung people, the traditional owners of the land that we're on today. Today, we pay our respects to leaders and elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and the hopes of all Dja Dja Wurrung people. We express our gratitude in the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and our hope that we may walk forward together in harmony in the spirit of healing. Today's presentation will provide a high-level overview of the budget, including some of the key projects that will be funded. We will hold another session next week for those who would like to hear more about the technical aspects of the budget, including the financial KPIs and ratios. Also at the session next week, we will try and answer any questions that are submitted from the community arising from this presentation or as submitted as part of our feedback process, and a little bit more at the end of this presentation about how you can do that. So as I said in the introductions, Philippa and the finance team do a lot of work behind the scenes to prepare the budget. The process starts back in January each year. So Philippa, would you be able to explain just how much work goes into preparing the budget and some of the key milestones and steps involved?
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. So preparing the budget is one of the key projects for the finance team in the first half of each calendar year. So we start way back in January and work with the managers across the organisation to prepare a forecast for the current year. So this is an important process in itself to review at the 6-month mark any impacts during the year that might result in an underspend or overspend on programs and projects, and how they might be addressed in the coming 6 months. And this then forms part of the process that identifies any projects or programs that need to be carried forward into the next year's budget.
And the councillors also spend a lot of time on the budget. Can you explain at what point and how they get involved?
Sure. So the councillors have special budget meetings weekly during March to ensure that they have a really good understanding of the assumptions, the cost drivers and any external factors such as inflation or interest rates and the impact that these will have on the cost of delivering services or increased cost of delivering projects. So a lot of projects in the budget are often the outcome of council decisions that are made during the year or even in previous years. So, for example, every time they adopt a new strategy or infrastructure plan, it will have financial outcomes for future budgets. So councillors also bring to those budget briefings some key projects arising from their discussions they've had with community members and groups throughout the year.
And are there any other inputs that to the budget that you need to consider when preparing it?
Yeah, definitely. So every year, the Valuer General Victoria undertakes valuations for all properties in Victoria. So they provide a report to us in April with our updated valuations. And this is a key part of the budget that we will talk to in detail next week and will be touched on throughout this presentation.
Thanks, Philippa. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the key components of the budget. We've got a slide here that shows the 3 key components. Can you tell us a little bit more about these?
Yes, so there's 3 key components of the budget, and they are revenue, so where the money comes from to pay for our services and our capital works. Our cost of services, and this is where the money is spent on delivering over 40 services to the community. And the last one is maintaining or upgrading our assets. And we refer to this last category of expenditure as capital works.
Okay, so let's look at these 3 areas in more detail. This next graph shows us that the main sources of revenue in council's budget, there are 3 of them there. As we can see on this graph, 41% of our revenue comes from ratepayers, but we're also very reliant on government grants for both delivering our services and for our capital works program. Can you give us some examples, Philippa, of what types of services or programs are funded by these grants?
Yes, so in the budget document, we have a summary of federal and state government grants. The recurrent ones which are shown here are the annual operating grants that fund service delivery. So in most cases, these don't actually cover the full cost of services. So we have for some services, the rest of the cost is covered by the user of the service, such as childcare, and that's through payment of childcare fees by the parents. But for the majority of the services listed here, council rates actually fund the balance of these services.
Yes, we sometimes hear the term cost shifting, and this is where council rates contribute more and more to the cost of a state government or federal government service over time. A good example of that would be libraries, where the state government used to contribute about 80% towards the cost of running our library, and it's now at about 50%. And I know in some councils it's even as low as 20%. Now this next graph really paints a picture. Can you explain this one to us, Philippa?
Yeah, it sure does, Lucy. So this graph compares CPI and the annual rate cap since its inception in 2016. I think it's really key to note here that CPI is one of the drivers that the Essential Services Commission uses to set the annual rate cap. So the intent is to have them pretty close, but as you can see from this graph, it's really not an easy task. And it won't come as a surprise to anyone with the talk about cost of living that costs are going through the roof. And council isn't immune to that. So we are seeing costs in areas increase dramatically, which are impacting both our bottom line as well as the cost of projects. But again, I guess it's important, it's not unique to Central Goldfields Shire, but we importantly are tasked with managing this within our means.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, that's for sure. So moving now on to how we spend that money.
Yeah, so as you can see here, our biggest planned expenses relate to capital works. We have a large capital works program planned for 23-24, which is just over $18.5 million. Of that 18.5 mil, we have a number of carry forward projects around the $3.2 million mark, as well as multi-year projects such as repairing roads that were damaged by the floods. So our employee costs are the next largest expense, as many of the services that we actually provide are people-centred, such as childcare or home and community care, or involve physical labour, such as parks and gardens and road maintenance. So included here are all the costs associated with employees and their entitlements.
So when you say all the costs, do you also mean work cover and superannuation?
Yeah, that's right. So employee costs aren't just the payment of salaries and wages into bank accounts. It also includes all of our statutory obligations. So some of these are increasing significantly and council has little control over those. So along with employers across the state, we're seeing work cover premiums increase, and as well as increases to superannuation. And they're determined by the federal government and are planned to increase by 0.5% per annum to 12% in 2025.
Yeah, definitely, again, challenges for us balancing the budget. So what about materials and services? What does that cover?
This relates to all our contractors and, of course, materials expenses as well. So this is obviously other than those captured in the capital works budget. So we have contractors across the Shire that help us deliver a range of services. So some of the larger contracts include management of our swimming pools, as well as the waste collection and disposal.
And we deliver over 40 different services to the community, as you've mentioned before. So let's go through what some of those services are and how much they actually cost.
So the budget document shows how much we spend on each service and also includes a description of these services. I would really highly encourage the community to have a look at these on pages 7 to 14 of the budget. So in this slide, we have shown the services which receive state and federal funding to offset the cost of the services, and they're in light blue. The services that are in dark blue are actually fully funded by rates.
Yes, and whilst we aged care and family care services cost the most to deliver, the direct costs of those are fully funded by grants and user fees. But corporate costs, sometimes described as overheads such as finance, HR and IT, are funded by rates to support these services. You can also see from this graph that having 3 outdoor pools and an indoor pool is one of our larger costs. We know that people highly value having a local pool and they're important for social connection, health and wellbeing. We also spend money through our capital works program on maintaining the pool, so that's a separate cost. So now looking at public safety and compliance, what sort of things are covered there, Philippa?
So emergency management expenditure covers the cost of planning response to and from emergencies. So, but just also, I guess, noting that the state government, the SES and CFA play a significant role and the lead role in responding to emergencies. Compliance, local laws and environmental health staff ensure that the community comply with a range of planning, environment and health legislation, as well as our own local laws.
And on this next slide, which is supporting the economy and growth, we can see that we spend quite a bit on tourism events. Can you explain what sort of activities are covered in those costs?
So the two major areas of expenditure are running the Visitor Information Centre, so that's supported by our volunteers as well, and the Energy Breakthrough event. We actually quantify the value of what volunteers provide and put this figure into the budget and as well as the end of year accounts. And the total figure for volunteers in the budget or across our organisation is almost $500,000.
It's a fantastic contribution by the community, isn't it? So this next slide shows that majority of our rates, which I think people expect, are spent on road or road maintenance, parks and gardens, public amenities, so they're our toilets, public toilets, and asset management. Can you explain a little bit more about those?
Excuse me, sorry. So yeah, we have, excuse me, over 1,500, excuse me.
Sorry, Philip.
Sorry.
You're right. Do you want to just take a glass of water and I can
Oh, that's all right.
I'll just cover this off while you maybe have a glass of water.
Apologies, sorry.
That's what happens when you're live. Yeah, so we've got over 1,500 kilometres of roads to maintain and a lot of open spaces and reserves. So the costs in this graph show the day-to-day maintenance costs and also planning our capital works program. The actual renewal and replacement of assets is shown in the capital works program, which we're going to cover later in this presentation. And this is our last sort of major area of expenditure, waste management. There's been a lot of changes to waste management processes in recent years, which is driving up costs, and there are more changes to come. Now, if you've recovered there, Philip, are you able to explain what some of the cost pressures are and how services are changing over the next few years?
Yeah, apologies. Thanks for that, Lucy. So yeah, there's a lot of changes to waste management and they're driven by the state government's plan to reduce waste to landfill, as well as recycling more materials and process more green waste. Sorry. So this reform will cost more in the short term as we transition to new ways of managing waste, such as separating glass waste from other recyclables. And that, I guess, in turn will require either new infrastructure, such as collection points, or cost more in curbside collections. So we're currently out to tender at the moment for some of these waste services, and we do still expect to see these costs rise in the future.
Thank you. So now moving on to our capital works program. These are driven by the need to keep pace with the replacement of ageing infrastructure and assets, completing a number of projects that have been funded through state and federal government grants, and we've had quite a lot of state and federal government grants over the last couple of years to deliver our priority projects, and also projects that support the Shire to grow, which is a key initiative of the current council. Can you just run us through some of these key projects in the budget, Philippa?
Yeah, definitely. So the capital projects for the 23-24 year total over $18 million. And some of these key projects include the Deledio netball courts. So we had a condition and compliance audit of the 2 netball courts at Deledio Recreation Reserve. And this identified significant issues, and council applied to the state government for funding last year and we were successful. So the funding will allow construction of 2 netball courts with lights. We also have the Indigenous Interpretive Garden. So this project has been developed in partnership with the Jar Jar Warong and will complete the overall upgrade of the art gallery. So works by Jara artists will feature throughout the space, telling stories about the significant cultural sites in the broader region, which includes Bendigo and Ballarat. So the project will also acknowledge the former 1861 fire station, which sits adjacent to the gardens. Also reconstructing Aboriginal rock wells, which were found within the Shire for traditional fire practices.
Yeah, fantastic. And this next project, the Goldfields Reservoir Stabilisation, was identified in a dam safety assessment across the state that was run by DECA and is funded by the state government. So design works for this one are underway and will determine the final cost of the project. And the Maryborough Town Hall, I know that the community are very keen to have the Town Hall open and available again for events. The Town Hall was closed during COVID after a review of the electrical infrastructure found it was unsafe and needed replacing throughout. It's been a really difficult project. Replacing electricals in a heritage building is complex and costly, and we've had difficulty in finding a contractor to complete the work. We're undertaking an expression of interest process to see if we can resolve any issues with the tender and design so we can get on and get the work done. There's also money in the budget to do work on an overall plan for the Town Hall for future upgrades and hopefully investment by other levels of government. So apart from these works, Philippa, our capital projects often can run over a number of years, and sometimes this can make it confusing for people trying to make sense of the budget. Can you explain a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so the development of projects can take a number of years. So often we allocate money in the budget for the development of a business case or a feasibility study. And following this is a concept design and then a detailed design and finally construction. We are reliant on grant funding from other levels of government to complete the construction of projects, and sometimes that even is for business cases and design. The timing of being awarded a grant and actually receiving the grant is not always clear in the funding guidelines. And it's not until we receive a grant funding contract that timelines are actually locked in. So we often see projects carried forward from one year to the next. And in other cases, some projects are impacted by unfavourable weather or difficult economic conditions, and they can also delay completion and push them out into another financial year.
Yeah, thanks, Philippa. We've looked closely at these 4 projects. So are there any other highlights from the Capital Works program, and where can people find it in the budget?
Yeah, so the Capital Works program also includes planning and design for future works for a number of our heritage buildings, including the Princes Park Grandstand and change rooms, and design and scoping for the town halls in Carisbrook, Denali and Talbot. And we will also do a design for the replacement of the Maryborough Leisure Centre roof and renewal of our kitchen at the Goldfields Family Centre. If you want more info on that Capital Works, you can find that in the budget document on pages 38 to 40.
Thank you. So as well as our capital projects, we've got a number of other initiatives which we're undertaking in 23-24. One of the areas which is of great interest at the moment to community is flood recovery work. So we anticipate to spend $9.8 million over 3 years to repair roads and other infrastructure that has been damaged by the October 22 floods. Some of these works have commenced, particularly works on minor culvert repairs, but I'd like to note that it does take a long and detailed process to get funding approved for these works through the Department of Transport, which is state government department. We've put a number of contracts in place ready to go when those works are approved. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about these works, we do have a dedicated page on flood works on our website, and we'll update that as projects get approved and are ready to start. So what other projects have we got planned, Philippa?
Well, we are in the process of preparing a play space strategy, which will be completed in the 23-24 financial year. So we know community members often ask us about the plans for a splash park. So the play space strategy will look at where a splash park should or could be located and how it will add to our play spaces across the Shire. This strategy will also identify the cost of upgrades of existing playgrounds and any new facilities such as a splash park.
Yeah, thank you. And another great project is the Talbot Futures project. And it's another one that crosses over a number of financial years, having commenced in the current financial year, funded by state government, and it will be carried forward into next year. This project is looking at where and how Talbot can grow. Talbot is currently constrained by not having wastewater services, or, layman's terms, sewerage. So we're looking at we are working in partnership with Central Highlands Water on this project, and they are looking at the options for the type, location and cost of a sewerage scheme. So they're providing the engineering and water and sewage knowledge, and we're working on the planning and how Talbot can grow.
Amazing. We also have a lot of IT projects on the go. So we're working in partnership with the Pyrenees Shire to upgrade our finance system and to also implement a customer request system for the first time. So these projects should make it easier for online transactions, and in the case of the customer request system, better management and monitoring of all of the customer contacts we have, whether it be phone, email, mail. We also have cybersecurity as noted as an emerging risk globally, and we'll be upgrading our systems and processes to manage this risk and to protect the security of both ours and the community's data.
And there are lots of other projects that we've got on the go as well. So some other projects and programs that are planned for 23-24 include completion of an early years infrastructure master plan, development of a strategic parking plan, and introduction of a new infringements module to improve availability of parking in the centre of Maryborough, a review of our local laws, which are due to expire in 2025, so that work is underway. We've also got a community recovery officer, which is being funded by the government. She has just recently started and will be with us for 12 months. We're doing the feasibility and design work for a new youth hub in alignment with the Youth Council strategy, and we really thank that Youth Council for their input and continued involvement. Continued work with the La Trobe University on the feasibility of a learning hub in Maryborough. Finalisation of a feasibility study for the Castlemaine Maryborough Rail Trail, and I know that there's community engagement opportunities on that at the moment. And also a number of strategic land use projects that have started this year and will continue on into next year, looking at Maryborough, Flagstaff and Carisbrook urban plan frameworks, so looking at how we can grow in those areas, and the Maryborough Heritage Review, which will provide a strong foundation for strategic growth in the municipality. So again, all that information is in the budget, and encourage everybody to have a look. So where to from here, Philippa?
Right, yeah, so we are in the first stages of looking at this timeline. So we're in the community feedback stage. So that's open at the moment and closes on the 9th of June. Next week, we will be holding another online session, and we're going to look at the more technical aspects of the budget for those that are interested in our financial statements, our financial KPIs, and how they relate to our longer term financial strategy.
Yeah, so we'll try and answer any questions that we receive from the community about the budget between now and then. If we don't get to all the questions, we most certainly will respond to them by mail and get back to people. But can you just let everyone know how they can send through their questions or their feedback on the budget?
Yeah, so the best way to provide feedback or ask questions is on our Engage Central Goldfields website. Either that, or you can email us at via the media@seagoldshire.vic.gov.au or comment below.
So thanks a lot again, Philippa, for joining me today to run through the budget. And I want to thank anybody who's watching at the moment or who looks at this video later on, and really appreciate if you can let us know what you think. Give us your comments and your feedback, or if you've got any questions. So we look forward to joining you all again this time next week. Thank you.